Hi everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We are going to see a quick introduction of Azure Functions and then we'll see some demos of it. Okay. Uh, this will be our agenda. Who am I? Serverless computing, function as a service, then what are Azure Functions actually, and then we'll see some demos. This is me, MVP, MCT, a blogger, YouTuber. How to contact? Here is that. Okay, so let's go to the point. So we'll go a quick introduction, see a quick introduction of serverless computing first. What is serverless computing? It's simple. You can say it provides us execution model where you don't need to worry about the infrastructure or backend servers. You just code your stuff and just push your stuff. Then the clouding environment, the cloud provider or the clouding environment manages all that infrastructure related stuff for you. So that's why we call it is serverless. Serverless doesn't mean it does not need servers at the backend, but it simply means you don't need to worry about those servers or managing those servers or creating those servers. You don't need to worry about those servers. But yeah, servers exist at the backend. What are the main benefits? Automatic scaling. So if there is a more load, it will automatically scale out. If less load, it will scale down. The basic principle, it is developed or it is designed to provide you high availability. And one major benefit of serverless computing is you pay as you use. You don't need to pay if you're not using it, if your infrastructure is idle, if your application is idle, you don't need to pay it. So this is the core of serverless computing, that you only pay when someone uses your service or uses the cloud execution environment. There are different variations of serverless computing. I mean, you may have databases as serverless. So your databases are hosted in cloud without, I mean, informing you or you know about the backend infrastructure. So it all happens automatically. One variation of serverless computing is function as a service. All right. So different serverless vendors provide you compute runtimes, and we call those compute runtimes as function as a service platform. All right. So what is a function as a service? Function as a service is simply mean a small self-contained function, like we have functions in programming. We deploy that function in cloud, and then those functions can be triggered by specific events or requests. So just assume you are writing a REST API and you have created a simple calculate cost function. Now that function will be deployed to the cloud, and then anyone can access that function by making some HTTP request or by triggering some event. You don't know where your function is deployed, which server it's being deployed. You don't need to worry about that. You just focus on your function logic and then you deploy that function in cloud. So this is what we call function as a service. Uh, it what is the purpose of this is that it takes away all the complexity of infrastructure management, right? So you don't need to worry about, as I mentioned in the serverless slide, that you don't need to worry about the infrastructure management, scalability, all that stuff. It all goes in the black box. And you are charged when functionality is executed. Now you have deployed your function, so you will be charged when someone executes your function, or whenever your function is executed, it is you are charged. Uh, where we use function as a service normally, when we are talking about event-driven applications. So, for example, some real-time data processing, IoT applications, and chatbots. Those are purely event-driven, right? And you can also use these services for backend processing, or something is happening at the backend, right? Based on the scheduler or timer, you can use these function as a service functionalities. Example of FaaS, Microsoft Azure Functions, then Amazon AWS Lambda, IBM Cloud Functions, Google Cloud Functions. So, I mean, we are going to see Azure Functions, but the similar concept is available in other cloud platforms. So if you learn one, you can easily start using the other platform too. What are Azure Functions? As we said, serverless solution exists in Azure Cloud, and it's built on top of Azure App Service platform. So if you have used Azure App Service, you know about that. So it's basically built on top of that, or it's extended version of App Service platform. And it processes events with a serverless code architecture, like we just saw. What is serverless architecture? Quickly, maintain less infrastructure, compute on demand. As I shared earlier, that functions, Azure functions or functions, these functions will be computed on demand. And here on demand means when event is triggered or you access these functions, so you will be charged or based on that. And Azure functions, interestingly, per month you have 1 million requests free available. You don't, I mean, if you want to use it from today, you can use it, and 1 million requests are free. And then even after that, only $0.20 per million executions are charged, which is quite low. I mean, as you know, whenever we talk about these numbers, you also need to check these numbers in detail. It depends on, I mean, it includes many other parameters. You need to check those too, right? It depends on the plan you follow, and then storage cost. So it does not include a storage cost. So if you are having some storage access or using the storage in your function, then you'll have to pay it. Okay, so another benefit of these functions or Azure function is that it supports many languages, right? It supports many languages. So, and if you see the whole picture, these are small self-contained functions which you can use by requesting these functions or by the events. So you can start imagining the usage of these functions as microservices. So if you are going to plan to develop microservices, these functions are very good candidate for that, right? You can use different languages. If you want to write one function in C#, you can do that. You can write other function in JavaScript. If you want, if you are good or you are seeing some logic which can be handled in PowerShell, you can write your one function in PowerShell. So yeah, it gives very much flexibility to you so that you can develop your small service or microservice in your favorite language, or if that specific functionality is more easy and you're comfortable with that, you can decide your language. So it simply means if you are developing a big application and you are going to write hundreds of these microservices, you can use different languages for different functions. That's the beauty of microservices. This is another view of the same thing. A language is supported, but the OS level support, right? So you can see that most of these, you can use these languages on both Linux and Windows. So yeah, it means if you write in .NET and C# and then you can simply select Linux and Windows. As we said, you don't manage the infrastructure, but when you develop these Azure functions, or when you create the Azure function in Azure, you tell what operating system you are targeting, right? So if your language is more suitable for Linux, you should use Linux. If there is a dependency of Windows, then you can use Windows, right, as a OS at that time. As we mentioned that the function is just a function. You need to execute that function, and that execution happens based on some triggers, right? Some event, right? So a lot of triggers are already available, triggers and bindings, you can say so. So for example, HTTP is a very simple example. So if you want to access your function on or through an HTTP endpoint, you can use this binding, right? But if you want to use if you want to trigger your function when something happens in Cosmos DB, you can use this trigger, right? And same. For example, you want that my function should be executed when a file is created in blob storage. You can use this event trigger, right? So you develop your application or the architecture in the event-driven model, right? So you decide on which function to be executed. Okay. So this is a small list, and then we have this list. You can see we have a lot of already available out of the box bindings and triggers available, and even you can create your custom triggers too, right? But you can see a list here. Okay, I think let's go to the demos and how we create these functions. So I'll go to Visual Studio 2022. Let's open it. I'll create a new project here. Then I'll use search for Azure or function word. Then I'll see the first option, Azure Functions. Okay, I'll give it some name. Let's say function app 3. Okay, on this screen, you can see the .NET framework you want to use. I'll keep .NET 6. Then you can see the triggers we have seen. We have different options here. I'll go with HTTP trigger, which is by default selected. Then I'll use enable Docker option. Let me choose this option. So in some cases, we need the storage account, blob storage account. In some cases, when you are creating some log or when you are creating some, for example, scheduler, you need a storage account. So this option will help you working locally and also in cloud. Enable Docker. If I want to run this application locally in Docker, I can use this option. And then this is authorization level. There are 3 different authorization level. I will go with anonymous. So if you use function, then you need function key. Then if you add one, then you need a master key. In anonymous case, we don't need any key. So I'll keep things simple, right? So I'll create a function app. So when you create this project, you are basically creating a function app. A function app holds multiple functions, right? So when we say Azure function, we talk about a simple function like this one. You can see here. Okay, let me rebuild it to install the relevant packages. Okay, so for Docker support, you need to install, for example, a Docker for desktop. I have already installed it here. And then when I will rebuild it, it's building up my environment. But what I was saying is that you have created a function app. A function app contains multiple functions. What is a function? Azure function is a simple function. You can see it's a static class. And a static class, we have a run method, which is taking some input. And if we will use different trigger, it will take different input, right? Based on that input. Then here is our logic, whatever logic we want to do. We want to check some database here, we can do that. We want to, make some another hit to some REST API we can do here. But it's your logic actually, it's your logic. And if you want to create a class library project here, you can do that, and you can add the reference of class library like you normally do. Okay, so you don't need to write all the logic here. But ideally, this function should be lightweight, simple. It should not be MBs. Should not be thousands or millions of lines. It should be quite simple. That's the basic purpose of these functions: lightweight and to the point, self-contained. So here what we are doing, we are allowing that this function can be executed, get and post, and then we are doing some logging here, and then we are expecting some query parameter name, and we are checking if this name parameter exists, then show something hello, and if this name parameter does not exist, then show this method. That's all. We are returning this message from this function. It's a simple in REST world, you can call it a simple endpoint, REST endpoint, which is doing simple logic. Okay, So this is my function. I'll rebuild it again, although I have it, just to show that everything is good. Okay, everything is good. Now, as I have chosen the Docker support, I can run this function in the Docker and without the Docker. I'll show you uh, without Docker. So, I mean, like the name says, it's Azure function. It should be running in Azure, but Visual Studio provides you support to run or simulate these functions locally for development purposes so that you test your things before deploying into Azure. I'll run it. Uh, it will start the console app at backend, and then okay, it's starting the application and it share you the link. Okay, it's normally, you can see this is a link, HTTP localhost, then a port, and then API, and then the function name. This is a name, right? So whatever name you want to give this endpoint, you will have to give that name here, function one. So I'll copy this link. Okay, copy, and I'll go into the browser and then I'll open that link here. Okay, it's showing me this message. If I'll pass that query parameter here, yeah, so it's showing hello and then this message. So very straightforward, very simple. Uh, let me change something here. I'll write it again. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to execute the same thing again. So you can see our function is returning the updated text. Straightforward, no problem, no confusion here. Now, just as a demo purposes, I'll show you how you can run in Docker. Everything is already ready. If you check this Docker file, everything is already available for you. You don't need to make any change here. So you can simply choose your profile here and run it in Docker. So when you run in Docker, it may take some time. Uh, So yeah, let it run. Meanwhile, we can see the Docker here. It's our function at 3.
There's a question here that says how the dependency injection will be resolved.
Dependency injection, as we said, I mean, it should be simple function. But if you want to introduce those frameworks, you will have to do it manually. Some support is available, but yeah, you will have to write those manually. We'll not be able to cover that in this session. But I mean, again, as you are going to have many classes available, let's say you are going to add more classes, then you will have to handle that stuff like we don't do in normal .NET Core. Okay, I was showing, yeah. So you can see here your container state. So once it's up, you can see the port it's expecting. I'll open it here and then I'll share API / my endpoint name function one. Okay, so same thing we are now accessing from Docker. Okay, so we can see it's working. Okay, okay. Any question in this? How, I mean, creating the application function app, then having a function and then running it from Docker and locally. Okay. What I'll do with that, if want to add another function here. So what I will do, I'll create another function. So a function app can contain multiple functions, and it is recommended that you keep all relevant functions in one function app. Okay, so I'll go here and then to add menu, and then I'll use new Azure function. I'll create the Azure function. I can name it anything. Let me name it function 2. Now you will see a different menu here. Again, if I want to create an HTTP trigger, I can do that. Let me create one HTTP trigger one. Okay, so again, you can see this is a function 2 with similar logic. I'll not explain that. Now let me add another function of different type. So Azure function, then I'll call it Azure function 3, then add. Now this time I'll use a timer one, okay? Here, the timer trigger. So when we want to execute it, I'll keep it 2 minutes, okay? Add. So this is our timer function. Let me rebuild it. One problem you will see when working with Azure function, normally it in the deployment part, right? But yeah, I think let's go to that later. Let me run it manually through the profile. So you remember we have chosen that cloud storage option, when we're creating the project. If you had not chosen that option, then you will see some error when you will have a timer scheduler, right? So if you see that error that storage cannot create a storage or simulator stuff, then you need to check that option again, okay? Now you can see the endpoints available here. I can check these endpoints. Let me check these endpoints quickly. And meanwhile, you can also see here the timer execution. You can see the log information. After every 2 minutes, we should be seeing this C# timer trigger function executed at, like something like this. Okay. So let me show you. I mean, those are very straightforward. We have seen earlier, but just let me show if those are still working or not. Yeah, this one. So this was one function 1, and this was our function 2. Okay, so this is function 2 without that tech test. And here we can see our timer is executing continuously, C#. Okay, after every 2 minutes, I hope so. 4, 31, 29. Okay. So that's how you create your functions in Azure, in Visual Studio. Now, if you want to deploy this, what you can do. So let me go to Azure portal. Okay. You will search function app here, and then you will see this option. If you open this option, then you will see this screen. Here you create your function apps. Let me create a function app for our testing. So you choose your the source group. I have created a source group for today demos. Then I'll give it some name. Let me give it name. Okay. Then we choose the option code Docker container. I'll choose code for now. Then you'll choose the environment of this function app. I'll choose .NET. Then the version. Then you choose the region. So the issues you may have may face is in some regions you will see that this function app is not supported, or when you are deploying, you may face those issues. So when you face any issues during the deployment, you need to check few things. One is this region. I'll explain the second thing or a few things later, but this is one thing which may create issues for you. So simple settings. I'll use the operating system Linux, and then we have different plan types: consumption, function premium, app service plan. Let me show you these plans quickly. I have a page open for you. So in these plans, normally the consumption is you can say that it is based on as you use, right? Pay as you go pricing model. And I have explained you that 1 million executions are free per month, and then this is as you use further. But and again, in this model, when you are working, it invokes the runtime your function whenever a request comes, and then it destroys that instance. But if you want a better option with enhanced performance, and you want that some instances should be there all the time, right? Then you can use this premium plan, right? And then again, third plan uh, is again create a plan. So yeah, I will not explain that in detail, but you need to see these when you are actually going to use this in production environment, which plan suits to you. So I was creating a function app. We'll go with the consumption serverless. The next is I want to do one thing before this. I'll go back here and I'll create a repository here. Okay. So I'm going to create a GitHub repository, simple GitHub repository, nothing special in this. Okay, so this repository is created. Now I'll go back here and then, okay, so I was creating this. Now it's asking me the basic stuff, and then storage account. I'll not make any change here. Then enable public access. That's fine. Monitoring, enable insights. I'll keep it. Then the deployment. So here it gives you option if you want to integrate this function app with your Azure with your GitHub repo. What does it mean? It will simply create a YAML file for you in your repo, and then will also create a secret with your publish profile. That's all. You don't need to use this feature. You can do that manually, but for this time I'll use this so that you can see I have attached my GitHub account here. I'll choose the organization. I'll choose the repository which I have created. Yes, it's available here. Then I'll choose the main branch. I want to push the file there. So if you want to preview the file there, you can see here. So sometimes if you have created the repo and you come here, then it may create issue while pushing the change to the repo. So if you face that issue, you can create the function app after some time, after a few minutes, but hopefully will not have that issue. So this is a simple GitHub Actions file. If you are already aware about this, it's good. I'll explain simply. So we are saying that this job build and deploy, or this workflow should be executed whenever there is a push in the main branch or manually, right? And then it has created two variables. It is assuming that our code or solution file will be on the root path. Then the .NET version here, what we are doing simple steps, checking out the code, then setting up our .NET environment. Then we are building our stuff, .NET build, and then we are pushing our function app code to this function app in Azure, right? So this action will actually deploy our change. So what are we are saying that whenever we will make a change into the main branch, our code will be compiled, published, and then will be deployed to Azure function through GitHub Actions, right? So uh, let me go to for next step. So if you don't want to use this option, you just need to create that file manually, and then you need to create that secret manually. I'll show you in a minute. Okay, everything is done, ready. So let me create this. Nothing complex here. We had not attached our code or deployed our code in this function app yet, so don't worry about that. It will take few seconds. And meanwhile, let's wait. Meanwhile, I'll show you the repo. We'll start seeing that workflow here once it's done there. Okay, yeah, it's done. Sorry, it's in progress, still in progress. Okay, okay. Okay, yeah, it's completed. Go to resource and also come here. You will see that, yeah, we have a commit from Azure App Service. And in the GitHub workflows, we can see that the same YAML file, right, which I have explained you. And it's expecting a secret with this name, which contains the publish profile. If I go here in settings and go to secrets, yeah, here, secrets, actions, then you will see that we have a repository secret with this name. And what this secret contains, if you go back here into your application, this one. So you get publish profile here, it will give you the file, you copy the content of that file, and then you create that in the secret. Okay, simple, like in an app service we do. So it has nothing yet, but if you open this link, public link, you see some welcome message here, app is running, and that's all. Now we want to deploy our demo app in this function app. Let's go there. I'll come here. We have three functions available. I'll right click on our function app. Then I'll go to publish. I'll use Azure. Then I'll use Azure Function App Linux. Then here you will use your account, and here you can see all your function apps. I'll choose this function app and then I'll finish here. It will create a publish profile and some dependencies here for you, which it will use later. So now the second issue you can face here the first time, but let me publish it. So if you will face that issue, I'll let you know how we can resolve that. Okay, so yeah, as expected. So if you face this issue, so you simply need to stop your function app, right? At least for the first time only. You don't need to do this again and again. But for the first time, you need to stop your function app and then try again. And if, by the way, if you don't create your function app first and you try to publish your stuff here, it gives you a menu where you can give the name of function app and all that stuff. That does not work well. So I'll suggest you to create your function app first in Azure and then try to publish from here. If you'll, use its default behavior, publishing and creating function app from Visual Studio, you may face many issues. Okay, it's good. And you can see it has also restarted the function app. So if we go here and refresh it, we should see this function app available. And then this is a link available. I'll click on it. And then we know our endpoints like API/function1. Okay. Okay, this is the first endpoint with this text. And if I go check the second endpoint, I should see simply message. And about third function, because that was just doing the logging, let me go to the log stream. We can see what's happening on the log. So currently what we have seen, how you can create multiple functions, very simple functions, how you can create function app in Azure, and then how you can publish from Visual Studio to Azure. And also we have seen, we have created that YAML file using while creating the function app, but you can create that function app, that YAML file manually. You don't need to create that while creating the function app. Okay, so let's wait here. We'll see some log in few minutes. Meanwhile, I'll go to the GitHub. Now I'm going to show you. Uh, so now what what we should do? We should push our code, this function app 3 code, into this repo, and then we can see the demo. I'll skip that step. I have already created a function app 1, and again it was created using the same flow, using the same stuff, and I'll show you. I make some change here, and then I'll show you how the workflow, the file created by Azure works, that GitHub Actions work. Okay. 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 So here we can see C# timer trigger function executed. Let's wait for the other stuff. So it means our third function is also working at the back end. But you can assume that the such functions can cost you a lot. I have just given 2 minutes and it will keep executing on the back end. If you are using it or not using it, it will keep executing, and it is counting. I mean, incrementing your counts of execution. Okay, I'll show you the last part is that I'll go here. The same function app stuff is here, and it has the same GitHub Actions. I'll show you here the same file which we have here, the same code, right? Checkout, environment setup, build, and then push to Azure Functions. And if I show you this function app, it's available here. This one, function app 139. If I go here and open it, and I call its endpoint API function 1, I can see this message. Okay. Now this function app is its code is available here. I'll make a change here and I'll show you the pipeline execution. Let me make a change here. I'll go here and make the change directly in. Okay, so I'll change this text. Okay, simple text change in the function, and then I'll commit the change to main branch directly. Although we're not discussing GitHub Actions in detail, should be having feature branch and all that stuff. So as soon as I have pushed my change to the main, the workflow is started here. So if you go to the workflow, you will see all those steps. Job name is build and deploy, and then it should be doing all that magic which we did from Visual Studio, building the code, pushing the code to Azure. Okay. And this was output before the change. I'll refresh it once publishing is completed. Okay. Okay, it's good. Now let's check the link back. I'll refresh it, and yeah, it's showing our endpoint available here. Okay. Any question in this? Okay. Yeah, that's all from my side. Let me see if any is anything here. Slides. Yeah, slides are done. Any question for now? Then yeah, these are the plan details. What features you get from these different plans? You can decide the options accordingly. I'll share the presentation link. It's available for, I mean, Google Drive, can access it. And this is the answer to that dependency injection with example, because I had not added here. So if you have worked with normal dependency injection, you know, in normal .NET Core, we have the startup class, and then we register our services like this one. So you can use that option here. But yeah, it will not come. It is not coming out of the box. You'll have to create this class and all that stuff. It's something like if you have worked with .NET framework, doing the dependency injection is something like that one. Okay. So, and then the example is available. But yeah, this will be straightforward, right? Because in dependency injection, we talk about that it maintains the objects for future usage. But herein we're saying that we don't, I mean, our functions are executed on demand and destroyed. So yeah, you will not have everything out of the box available. But any question in what we have done here? Anything you want me to repeat, or?
You can share your resources on the group on the AI Azure group. There's a group, right? You're in that. There's an AI Azure group. You can share your resources in that.
It's WhatsApp group or which group?
No,
Sorry.
no, no. It's in the Teams. Are you connected to
Oh yeah, yeah,
Teams?
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'll share that.
in our community group, there's an AI Azure group for today's event. So you
Oh
can
yeah,
share that there, and then also we can also share it if you can share it on over the email or something with Adnan and Shakir. I think they'll be able to share it with the attendees as well.
sure, sure. I'll do that. Problem.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ali, Bilal.
Sure.
Um,
Problem. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for having me.
much.